morning, afternoon, evening, or night, whatever it is in podcast land where you're at. My name is Jeff Matthews, broadcasting from the Malta Rose, Lake Murray Marina, South Carolina. Today we're going to talk a little bit about pride. Personality traits are what defines us. They can make or break our ability to function with the world around us, leading to success or failure. We often consider personality traits as inherent of the individual, but should we reconsider and consider this as something that can be taught just like math, English, or science? Today we're going to talk about pride and its antithesis, humility. Maybe the most controversial personality trait in our society. We're going to explore how pride can lead to success and how the same trait also leads to failure.
I stand here before you not as a prophet, but as a humble servant of you.
I am Norm Station.
I am the number one most impactful artist of our generation.
I would give myself an A+.
I give myself an A+. Look, I hate to do it, but I will do it. I would give myself an A+. Is that enough? Can I go higher than that?
So you want to be proud of what you do.
We need to teach pride to our up-and-coming generations in a way that promotes success, inclusiveness, and compromise. I read a story once called The Cuban Swimmer by Milcha Sanchez Scott, where pride was portrayed to me as a positive character trait, where the main character, Margarito, used pride in herself to accomplish an extraordinary task. Pride was also displayed as a negative character trait in her father, Eduardo, who nearly killed his daughter as a result of his own pride. How we develop these traits isn't obvious, and we should be more deliberate about teaching pride. Today we're going to explore pride, how it's perceived, how it leads to success, and how it can lead to failure. We'll explore whether or not we can use this information to foster a sense of authentic pride in our up-and-coming generations that is healthy and socially responsible.
What does it all mean?
If we are going to talk about pride, we must first define it. Dictionary.com defines it as a high or inordinate opinion of one's own dignity, importance, merit, or superiority, whether it's cherished in the mind or is displayed in bearing, conduct, etc. Alternatively, Dictionary.com also defines pride as pleasure or satisfaction taken in something done or belonging to oneself or believed to reflect credit upon oneself. Humility is defined by the quality or condition of being humble, a modest opinion or estimate of one's own importance, rank, etc. Finally, Dictionary.com defines hubris as excessive pride or self-confidence, or arrogance. Now that we know the official definition of each of these character traits, we can talk about how they present themselves in society, and how they affect our lives and the lives of those around us.
I am the number one most impactful artist of our generation.
Hubris.
I would give myself an A+.
I give myself an A+. Look, I hate to do it, but I will do it. I would give myself an A+. Is that enough? Can I go higher than that?
We see it everywhere. By the very nature of hubristic pride, it's excessive and will always be louder than that of humility. As a result, this hubris is the example our up-and-coming generations see and mimic, because they view those exhibiting hubris as being successful. But is this an accurate portrayal? Jessica Tracy, a professor of psychology at the University of British Columbia, would say otherwise. She argues that hubris is the result of covering up shame. Let's listen in on an interview she did with Matt Lilley on the Bright Vibe podcast.
When you said earlier that I said things in the book that you're sort of like intuitively you think you know, but you've never kind of read the science behind it or whatever. I think that's a great example of that, where I remember when I was a kid too, my mom would say the same thing to me. She'd say, oh, the reason they're being a jerk is because they feel insecure. And it's so counterintuitive.
Right.
It's like, wait, why are they're acting like they're really great? They're insecure. But yes, I think that's absolutely the case, that people who are behaving these really grandiose, exaggerated, inflated self ways, they're not doing it because they actually believe that stuff about themselves. If they really did, they wouldn't have to do that. They wouldn't have to bully others, And so it really is coming from this sort of, oh gosh, I'm so nervous this isn't true. I'm so nervous about the shame that I need to hide. So
that's an interesting concept, using pride to cover up shame. Earlier in that interview, Tracy provides the example of former President Trump's hubris coming from the fact that he didn't earn his wealth, but his father did. Therefore, with this information, we draw the conclusion that hubris comes not from our own accomplishments, but from covering up a personal perception of our lack of accomplishment. This was also further evidenced in the Cuban swimmer referenced in the beginning of this podcast, when Eduardo, Margarita's father, pushes his daughter to accomplish something he himself would not otherwise be able to do. So whether intentional or unintentional, as a society, we inadvertently teach our up-and-coming generations hubristic pride. This is not healthy for ourselves or our society, and is all the more reason we need to be intentional about teaching authentic pride, which we will explore later in the podcast.
I stand here before you not as a prophet, but as a humble servant of you.
I am no one special.
Humility. The antithesis of pride is often seen as the more noble or ethical of the two traits. But where does humility come from? We heard the definition earlier as humility being a modest opinion of oneself. People and organizations often promote humility to combat the hubris that is so prominent, and to encourage a more likable image to the world around us. For example, the Greensboro Fire Department's training logo has the words "work hard, be humble" in it. Another source of humility being taught is in the Christian Bible. For example, 1 Peter 5:6, as narrated by Max McLean.
God opposes the proud, but shows favor to the humble. Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand.
Or James 4:6 through 10.
But he gives us more grace. That is why Scripture says, God opposes the proud, but shows favor to the humble. Submit yourselves then to God, resist the devils.
Or Proverbs 8:13, which denounces pride.
To fear the Lord is to hate evil. I hate pride and arrogance, evil behavior, and perverse speech.
While seen as honorable in the eyes of God, does it serve society here on earth? Strong traits of humility can lead to failure and isolation, as pointed out by Weidman, Chang, and Tracy in a study titled The Psychology Structure of Humility, where they find that self-abasing humility tends to follow personal failures and is associated with more negative self-insight and leads to action tendencies oriented towards avoiding others. Additionally, they find that humility has two distinct sides, one involving submissive and passive behavior, and the second involving dedication and commitment to valued principles. While humility is certainly honorable, its excess is not self-serving, nor does it serve society. So what's the middle ground? Authentic pride. Authentic pride is a value that bridges the gap between two extremes, hubris and humility. Jessica Tracy, the professor of psychology from earlier, expands on our definitions of pride to tell us what authentic pride is.
With hubristic pride, authentic pride is based on an authentic or genuine sense of self, and we feel it when we make a realistic appraisal of ourselves, when we kind of look at who we really are, how we're doing, what we're achieving, think about what we want, and see ourselves in a realistic manner. That's authentic pride.
Charles S. Carver takes that a bit further in a study done in 2010, taking from both Heckhausen and Williams and DeSteno as saying authentic pride as a core self-conscious emotion is believed to motivate people to persevere in the absence of extrinsic motivations. This is healthy. This benefits society. This is what we need to be teaching our youth. Carver's study also states that people who experience authentic pride appear to enjoy life. Authentic pride was also related to measures of sense of purpose in life and to the tendency to respond to losses in life by moving on to new goals. All of these are adaptive and positive characteristics. I was led down the path of looking into pride after reading The Cuban Swimmer and my link to endurance sports. In fact, one of the first examples of authentic pride comes from endurance sports in the Battle of Marathon, when Eucles runs in full armor to Athens to report their victory. This example, reported by Plutarch in De Gloria Atheniaeum, demonstrates pride through the merit of one's own actions or those of one's own team. Endurance athletes tend to have an inordinate amount of authentic pride. Here's a clip from John Wellens, a paddler I interviewed who had just competed in a 650-mile race. While he never spoke of pride directly, the entire interview revolved around people's actions as they related to their motivations. Let's listen in to get a sense of that.
To be able to push through those hallucinations. What drove you to push through the hallucinations you did have?
Man, I was turning 50 and I signed up. I think there are better questions of how they can do it over and over again. You know, I like I said, I did it once. For Troy Reeves, he told me, I guess everyone has their own reasons. It seemed like, from after talking with them, because they all had that question for me, like, why did you sign up for this and what are you looking to get out of this race? I thought that was very insightful. You never have someone in a 10K running race ask you about that. When I was 9 years old, they'd be like, hey, you're out here with 3,000 other people, big deal. Yeah. But those, they want to get to know you. They're like, oh, who's the new kid on the block?
Right, yeah.
I'm like, I don't know. I usually do like much shorter races. Sally O'Donnell called a Knoxville race. It was like 23 miles, I think it is. Something like that.
This reminded me of another quote from Carver's study. Put differently, in this view, authentic pride arises from self-evaluation of doing, whereas hubristic pride arises from self-evaluation of being. In conclusion, we've discussed pride in two separate forms, as well as humility, and how each affects ourselves and society, and where these traits are being taught, and they're not necessarily being taught deliberately. How we teach authentic pride to our youth is up for debate. The TED Radio Hour on NPR has a good episode dedicated specifically on how we teach children. It's entitled Teaching for Better Humans 2.0. In fact, one of the interviews with Thomas Coran specifically speaks about learning to live with our imperfections, which is an excellent first step to teaching authentic pride. Additionally, endurance sports pushes an individual beyond the point at which extrinsic motivations matter, and in turn develop authentic pride. As humans, we tend towards extremes, in this case hubris or humility. Let's be deliberate about teaching our youth authentic pride, and make them all run marathons. I'm joking.
A circus was 2 hours of additional calisthenics, designed to wear you down, to break your spirit, to force you to quit. No one wanted a circus. You will fail. You will likely fail often. It will be painful. It will be discouraging. At times it will test you to your very core. But if you want to change the world, don't be afraid of the circuses.